Alright, what's up guys? In today's video, take a look at the M13. I think with the rise of the Kilo and the nerf of the Bruin, this is a gun that has gone to the back of the bus where a lot of people really don't use it anymore. And I still think it's an excellent weapon. It's one of the most accurate weapons in the game. It also has the highest headshot percent out of every single gun in the game, which to me helps bring that time to kill down, which is obviously one of the reasons people don't use it. So the best benefit of this gun obviously has the fastest fire of all the assault rifles, and the best thing also about it is it has the best range out of all the assault rifles. So when we take that first damage range off, we add that long barrel, that monolith expressor on it, it has the longest range out of any assault rifle, which is what makes it excellent. Another good thing about it, especially in Warzone, is it has a higher damage at that max range than all of the 5.56 ARs like the M4, the Kilo, and the Grau, which obviously helps bring that time to kill down, which is what makes it excellent at long range. So I think it's the most accurate. It has the least amount of recoil. You guys will see in some of the clips, you guys probably wonder why Liddy has no recoil, and it's just the gun. The gun has no recoil. It's an excellent weapon. What we're talking about right now is actually that time to kill versus the Grau, the M4, and the Kilo, which are obviously the most popular weapons. We're going to take a look at how good it actually is in that category, and then compare those best class ups of those weapons to that of the M13 and see if it stacks up. So what we're taking a look at right now is the time to kill of the M13 versus the Grau, the M4, and the Kilo. This is the one reason why I think the gun started to tank. Mind you, it does have an excellent headshot percent, like I said, which helps bring that time to kill down. But when you compare it to that of these other guns, the biggest factor for me when you avoid all the ranges, all the time to kills, really the damage per mag. If you compare it to the Grau, the M4, and the Kilo, you guys can see they're identical. This is the biggest factor in what to me about the M13 down is the overall damage. You guys can see it does 250 less damage per mag, which is one whole kill of an enemy up to the base range, obviously. And then if you do the where the range drops off, you guys can see once again is the lowest. So it is the lowest dealing damage weapon. It might have the fastest fire rate, obviously, but with that low damage, your damage per mag is on the low end. So when you take a look and compare, where does it actually excel? As you guys can see, with the M13 is the one here in the green. You guys can see identical almost time to kill up to that first base range as obviously the Kilo and the Grau. If you take away the M4, you guys can see almost identical here, which is where it's pretty competitive, but due to the fact that it has lower damage, is going to do less damage per bullet, which to me is a big factor in taking someone down. So it does, like I said, have the longest range. You guys can see a little bit farther than that by like 7 meters. And obviously the Kilo in the mid is excellent. It obviously beats the Grau once the Grau drops off, but no one uses the Grau. So when you put that, take that Grau away, add that M4 back in there, you guys can see the M4, the Kilo, then the M13. There's a very minimal difference where it excels, and the biggest factor is above 87 meters is the only time it will kill faster than obviously the M4 and the Kilo, which is a big factor. Anything above 88 meters or so, which the Kilo does have the most range, it's the only gun that's going to be competitive against. Obviously, you guys know with the M4, the Rambo's gun, it's like 80 meters or less is where the M13 excels, and obviously has the fastest time to kill because, like I said, it has the biggest damage range beyond that. But like I said, the biggest factor is in that damage. You guys can see even above that 87 meters, it still only does 60 more damage per mag, which is a very minimal negative. I do think it's an excellent weapon, probably for multiplayer, due to the fact that it has no recoil and the accuracy is incredible. But based on these numbers alone here, I think there's a reason it is a low tier weapon right now. Maybe they could buff it a little bit. Obviously, we're almost in the end of the life cycle of the game. I'd definitely like to see some weapon changes, but that's basically where it's at. It does the least amount of damage, and there's only a minimal percent of where the time to kill where it's excellent, which is like a 5% damage range, you know, of where the time to kill is actually the best. So it's definitely not an excellent weapon, but it is a very accurate weapon. Like I said, it's the best recoil. So the biggest factor, though, is once you actually take those stats away and you compare where it is actually good, you guys will see these are the stats here. Obviously, all the brace stats. You guys can see that aim down sight time is actually where it's number 1, and on that whisper barrel we're going to talk about in just a second, you guys will see that's where it's actually number 1. So the ADS speed is going to help bring that time to kill down due to the fact that obviously with that M4 is almost 100 more milliseconds slower. It's going to help mediate that time to kill, and this is where I think the M13, when you actually start comparing the class setup of it to these are weapons. You take away that time to kill and that damage and compare your actual stats. It's very good in the ADS category, which to me is a big factor. The bullet velocity is pretty average, but when you compare this to the overall stats of it, to me, it's on the lower end. I would prefer to use the Growl, honestly, just because it has a little bit better range, even though it's not the best in time to kill. But I definitely think it's an excellent weapon in multiplayer, so we're going to talk about how to build the best class setup right now for it. Alright, so with obviously that marksman barrel, like I said, it's going to give you the best range out of every assault rifle. Obviously, we're going to start every class setup with the marksman monolithic. The biggest factor for me, what makes this gun have no recoil, is you are going to be stacking that VLK sight on there with a grip. What I personally prefer is the Commando. I'll showcase the recoil patterns on the screen. You guys will see the base versus the marksman. Basically, you have a little text so you guys can see which one's better. I prefer the Commando just because the difference when you stack that Ranger on there, it's going to significantly lower your aim down sight time, which, like I said, this is where the gun is best, is the ADS category of all the ARs. So you want to keep it where it's going to be better than all the other ARs, which is going to help compete with those guns. So I put in the Commando on the VLK. Obviously, it helps your stabilization, which helps your recoil. And obviously, they both lower the recoil, and with the marksman, lowers it as well. So you get pretty much 5 different ways to improve your recoil. And obviously, the Commando, better stability. So it gives your overall accuracy an incredible increase, which in my opinion is why I think it's the most accurate gun. Personally, more accurate than the Kilo. A lot of people could argue that, but I think it's a little bit more stable, a little bit more consistent. Obviously, like, with that 60-round mag, fastest fire gun needs 60-round mag. This is my personal class setup right here. You guys are watching in some of the gameplays, but like I said, that Cyclone, aka the Whisper, the silent barrel, is excellent. What I think it changes by adding that is kind of similar to the Kilo by putting that SOCOM barrel in there. It allows you to build a better rushing class setup. You get no loss in strafe speed, no loss in movement speed, and a lot faster aim down sight time, obviously that of the marksman barrel, while still getting an increase in range and still getting a silencer. So by adding it, gives you the ability to add one more attachment, which is going to help make your class setup better. So take a look at that Cyclone class. Obviously, starting out with the VLK sight, this 100% is going to help you build the best class setup immediately. The biggest factor, obviously, like I said, 60-round mag, but the factor in you're adding that extra attachment, you're obviously going to use the foregrip, is you can put the tack laser on there. This is going to help bring your aim down sight to be like the fastest aim down sight of any class setup you can build in Warzone, which to me is excellent. Obviously, increases your stability and your steadiness, which helps your tracking. And obviously, to get the fastest aim down sight, we're going to be stacking it with that Commando. So this is the class setup I developed to help build me the best rushing class. This is actually the class setup I was running to get the nuke. You guys will watch it in just a second, but that's the class setup for the Cyclone. For me personally, that marksman barrel class setup, after I played yesterday with it, I absolutely shredded with it. The gun had no recoil at all. You can literally claim that as no recoil, but you guys see some of the clips. It literally just shoots in a straight line, which is why I like the Growl. I think the Growl had the best recoil. Now that I've recently tested this gun out and I really, really like it, I think I'm going to switch to the M13 and stop using the Growl. But like I said, with that low damage is where you're going to lose out. So now we're going to jump over, talk about some of these unique attachments and why I recommend them. So obviously the most important thing to talk about is the Commando versus Ranger breakdown. Which grip is actually worth using, and obviously which barrel. So when you actually take a look at the recoil pattern, you guys can see on the screen, the Commando is on the left with obviously the Whisper barrel. The Ranger is on the right, and the recoil is on the right is with the marksman barrel. You guys can see the recoil patterns look almost identical. The biggest difference obviously with that Ranger is going to help with your initial recoil to be a little bit better. But when you factor in the ADS loss you get with the Ranger, as far as the strafe speed, the movement speed, they're so similar that it's not that really big of a difference. Obviously, the Ranger is a little bit better. So when you take a look at that Whisper barrel class setup, you compare the aim down sight time. The loss with the Ranger is only about 10% worse, which is not that bad. I definitely would recommend the Ranger due to the fact that it has a better movement speed and a better strafe speed on the Whisper barrel class. So if you're stacking the Whisper, you could definitely use the Ranger if you're using the attack laser. But you take a look at the best class setup with the marksman barrel and the VLK sight, your ADS goes down about 13% with the Rangers. Obviously a little bit worse than the other class. About 46 milliseconds loss just by going from Commando to Ranger in your ADS. And like I said, with that Commando on there, that's where the M13 is better than a lot of these other assault rifles, is in that ADS category. So I definitely recommend the Commando. if you are stacking with the VLK and the marksman. But if you're using the whisper barrel, the Commando obviously works, but it does have a slower movement speed and a slower straight speed, which helps obviously lower mobility for a close range weapon, which I don't really recommend. But for me, with the whisper barrel, I'm going to be stacking with the Ranger. With the marksman VLK, so I'm going to be stacking with the Commando, and that's to me the biggest difference between the two grips, where I kind of dictated what's best. In my opinion, there's no real difference in recoil. The biggest loss is how much of a loss you're getting in the ADS by switching to the Ranger. So that's basically it for that. The next attachment to take a look at is obviously the Blackout rounds. Now this is something that's unique for this gun. Basically what it does is gives you a little bit more range. In exchange, you get worse bullet velocity and worse recoil. Like I said, with this gun, it has the best range of every assault rifle, which is what makes it amazing. So by adding a little bit more range to get worse recoil, so you make the gun better where it's already the best, and you make the gun worse where it's the best, is not something that I recommend. Due to the simple fact this gun has 1 damage range, you're basically improving the gun where it says you get 10% more range. It's really only 5%, because on a normal gun you'd be getting an improvement on 2 different ranges. With this gun, it's only on 1 range. Therefore, it basically does nothing to really help the gun and make it better. So the Blackout rounds 100% avoid. Obviously, another thing it does obviously only come with 30 rounds. You guys can see the difference in the recoil. You guys can see the base with 30 rounds versus the Blackout with 30 rounds. This is the most accurate gun in the game. Adding a attachment that basically doesn't really help the gun is not something I recommend at all. So that's pretty much it, though. Nothing too unique about this gun. It's a very simple class setup, kind of like the Ram in my opinion. It's going to be very, very good with one class setup. So it's not really why I'm breaking a lot of the attachments. But hopefully this video helps you guys make a better class setup. Make sure you guys like the video. Leave a comment down below. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. Make sure you guys use my discount code on all of your Scuff and GFUEL purchases. And if you guys haven't yet followed me on Twitch, go follow me on Twitch at Trapgod. I'll be live streaming every single day. So if you guys want to come hang out with me, talk to me, ask me some questions, twitch.tv/Trapgod. Come check out the stream. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. I'll talk to you guys in the next one.
Securing B. Friendly UAV overhead. Enemy white phosphorus inbound. Enemy cruise missile incoming. Changing mag.